I think like this show has really evolved way past what I had ever even considered what it could be when I initially decided to do it in the first place. And it leads me to this concept that everything is hard when you do it at first. It's this idea that anything that you want to do, it's always going to be so much different when you actually go and do it versus how you planned it, versus how you thought you wanted to do it, versus what you expected it would be when you started it. But for the most part, anytime you do something new, it's always much harder in the beginning than you anticipate. And look, this is everything, right? This is, you're going to start a new job. Oh, it's going to be amazing. And then it's trying to figure out people, trying to understand like the rhythms and relationships and all this stuff. Like you move into a new house. It's like, oh, all these things, you know what I mean? You start a company. Oh, it's like, I already know this industry. Like, this is going to be great. And then like, it's all of these difficult intangibles you didn't realize, because when you built the company in the same industry before, you had a great operator that handled all these things that you thought were less complex. Like, there's all these aspects of doing something for the first time that make it really difficult. And while you go through the process of doing it, it begins to get easier over time. And I think if you can take the time to realize and set your own personal expectations every time you do something new, that there is going to be sort of a process of learning, evolving, and growing until it gets past a certain point where it finds a rhythm to where it is more natural, organic, and you can enjoy it the way that you envisioned it when you first started it. And you can apply it to the way that you build a company. And it's very similar to the process of product market fit. You always go through the process of putting together your plan and your strategy and everything that you want to do. But once you get it out there, then it begins to reveal itself of all the things that you're doing, whether or not they're working or what adjustments you should make, the things you need to change, the things you need to rethink in order to ultimately find product market fit and find a successful business. And it applies to everything. When you create a television show, it seems like, oh, you just created a show. In most cases, you shoot a television pilot and you learn so much about the television pilot, which is essentially just one episode that's not even part of the series. You just do it. It's like a proof of concept in television. And they're essential because you basically get your first step of making it for real. And then you realize, okay, here's all the different things I need to do to adjust that. And I'll use Ridiculousness as an example. When we shot the pilot, it took us 18 hours. We got there at like 6 a.m. and left late at night to shoot a 22-minute pilot. It was grueling. It was intense. I was trying all these different things, because you just don't, even though you had a really clear concept of what the show would be, you don't really know how it's going to work exactly till you do it. But we learned so much. Then when we went to shoot the series, now we prepared like, hey, we're probably going to be able to shoot like 1 or 2 of these a day max, right? And then be prepared for these grueling all-day shoot days. And we added all of these bells and whistles to it and had to continually do all these reads and different things. But then through that process began to realize like, we're actually, by putting so much structure to the way we're doing it, it's pulling away from the best part of it, which is ultimately the way that it feels natural when we're just flowing with the clips and having fun. And then eventually over time, it then settles into, okay, all right, now we can do 2 a day easy. All right. Yeah. Now let's do 2 before lunch. Okay. Now we could do 3 a day. Oh, let's do 3 before lunch. Oh, now it's even more optimized. By the time you get to season 25, you're doing 6 a day, in a few hours, where before you could barely do one in 18 hours, and that is sort of the process for almost anything you do for the very first time. It reveals itself to you, and it's a difficult struggle of evolution that you go through on anything you're doing for the first time. And again, if you can just put yourself in a place of personal expectations and understanding that this is the process that I'm going to go through to ultimately understand if this is what I like, and if it's for me, and if I believe it'll be successful and lead me to the quality of life that I expected from when I decided to do this new thing, because so often we get so excited about the new thing and what it could actually mean for us. New relationship, new job, this company, this podcast, all these different things that you forget about, like all of the difficulty and struggle that you're going to have to go through to ultimately get it into a place where it's enjoyable, gives you energy, and hits on the expectations that you expected when you first did it. And even for me, as this podcast has evolved, I knew initially, I wanted to do a podcast because it'd be the right platform for me to just be able to speak about my sort of business strategies and showcase my way of thinking as it relates to business in general. And it slowly started to evolve into sharing a lot of my sort of personal life philosophies. Then we said, hey, we're getting all these videos on our website of people that are submitting ideas for us. It might be great to have some conversations with them, because initially I didn't want to do interviews in a traditional podcast. I just knew that wasn't for me. I didn't want to have like just interviewing other entrepreneurs. The only people I wanted to interview and have on the show was partners and people that I built the companies with. I really love that as like an aspect of really giving an insight to, how I build and who I build with and the stories of what we build. And it's still a part of the show and always will be. But as the show began to evolve, and as I was pushing to how can I do more of them more consistent with less effort and put it in a place that I really enjoy and can optimize it, it really led to this sort of evolved state of talking life and business strategy, and then really being able to mentor entrepreneurs in both life and business is something that really gave me a ton of energy and was much more fun to produce, and it was easier for me to automate and get it into a system. And that's how the show itself evolved over the first 30 episodes into what it is today, where it is mainly a life and business strategy mentoring show versus just speaking with my partners and founders in business. And the reason it got there, and I allowed it to evolve and get to this place, is because when I started it, I did it knowing that I had to learn it and let it naturally end up in a place that I enjoy doing it the most, and continue to experiment with what that is. I wasn't so rigid that this was going to be the only way that I'm going to do this show, and not allow myself to kind of let it evolve and adapt and grow into it naturally. Now, the goal hasn't changed. I love shooting this show as it's an opportunity for me to in this form showcase like my philosophy in business and life, but it is evolved much different than when we did initially, and in the beginning it was much more difficult for me to do, and trying to figure out how much time it would take and all these different sort of aspects. And it's now been driven to sort of this automated state that I'm able to get it into a rhythm. And then what have I done? I've now planned out when I'm going to shoot shows for almost the entire year of 2022, right? And I was able to do that because over time I evolved into understanding how much it takes me to shoot these openings, then how much it takes me to shoot with each guest, and then how much prep time it takes for each thing. And I slowly made it easier and easier as I learned more and more about it and how to do it and how to do it better to get it into this state. And look, it's a couple examples of how I've gone through the process of really growing into a state of anytime I do anything new, man. I mean, it's hire somebody, it's do a new company, it's have a new partner, it's I don't care what it is. I really go into everything knowing that, hey, it is always difficult at first, and what you have to do is do everything you can to be open-minded about how you can evolve it and grow into it, getting easier and easier over time.